Hi guys, thanks for joining us this morning, River Ridge Online, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Clark Ellis. I'm a sophomore at the University of Charleston here in Charleston, West Virginia, and I attend River Ridge Church here in Charleston regularly. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my story and how I met the Lord. I have one sister, and my mother and father, they're still together and they're awesome, and I love them so much. And you know, the way that they raised me when I was younger was sort of a golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated, sort of thing. And so I always sort of knew right from wrong, but I never knew much of a reason behind it, or never knew that there could be a purpose behind it. And so, you know, going into high school, I was playing two sports, football and lacrosse, and then also playing church basketball. And so that was my friend group. I would hang out with these guys that I played sports with, and it wasn't long before we started looking to the upperclassmen to see what that should look like, what our lives should look like. And a lot of the things that we saw were guys chasing relationships with girls. And so I started to throw that into the mix in my life. I would chase relationships with girls, and not very healthy ones, actually. And so I thought, okay, so what else are these guys doing? Or what else are my peers doing or my friends doing that I could add in that they're saying is giving them life or saying is awesome for them? And so I added partying to the mix, drinking on different occasions, and different drugs on different occasions. And you know, for my parents, when they found out that I was doing this stuff, it was only detrimental to them and terrible for my relationship. Looking back on it, it just felt like I was supposed to be filled up by this stuff. Everyone I'm looking at is just kind of saying, oh, there's purpose in this kind of, or at least acting like there's purpose in this in the way that they pursued it. But I just knew deep down that that necessarily wasn't it. And at the end of my freshman year, I ended up getting invited to an event called Young Life, where I met J.B. Ward, who ended up being my Young Life leader. And one of the first things I remembered is when I very first came, J.B. came out. He recognized that I was new just because people were talking to me and he hadn't seen me before, and he introduced himself and he asked me a lot of questions about myself, and I just felt so welcome. And I immediately was kind of taken off guard, taken aback at the fact that this like random guy, like, I didn't have to do anything to impress him. I didn't have to go out of my way to get his attention. He just wanted to know who I was, and I loved that. So I kept coming back to Young Life. But I kept coming back to Young Life at the same time while I was partying and drinking and, you know, feeling left empty every weekend through the relationships that I pursued with girls and the activities that I pursued with my friends. And so this kind of continued, where I would go to Young Life. And if you don't know what Young Life is, basically it's like this huge, crazy, fun party, and it's a way to get a lot of high school kids into a room and share the gospel with them all at once. And so at the end of these crazy like party-like events, they would share this little message about Scripture, and I kind of started listening. They would do it in a relatable way, and it would always feel like it had something to do with my life specifically. So I started taking that into thought, and I started reading and praying. And I decided to sign up for Young Life Camp. But the only issue was, right before I decided to sign up for Young Life Camp, my mom had a terrible stroke my sophomore year of high school. So I almost lost my mom. And so at that point, all I had known is that I had brought what I thought was a relationship with God into my life, at least a little one. I maybe started reading a little bit, praying just a little bit. And then the next thing I know, my mom had this terrible stroke where I almost lost her, and it still affects her and my family today. And so that was really hard for me. So that second semester of my sophomore year, I decided I wasn't going to anything. And so I'd already signed up for camp, and I'd already put down a deposit. But I also was like, you know what, why could God do this to me? And like, obviously this stuff's a fraud. Like, this stuff is just ridiculous. But you know, towards the end of the semester, JB kept reaching out, and a lot of my friends were going on the trip, and I thought it would one, be a waste of money, and two, I would at least miss out on a really good time with my friends if I didn't go. And that, at Young Life Camp that week, was the first time that I heard the message of the gospel, that all these things that I was chasing and pursuing, the girls, maybe the drinking and the drugs, maybe trying to find my identity in sports or in school or in popularity, were never going to fill me up, because it's all a condition of what my sinful heart wants. It's the greediness, the selfishness of my sinful heart. And I knew the only way to fix that this week was a relationship with Christ. So on June 9th, 2016, it was a Thursday, I accepted Christ at Young Life Camp in a prayer with Jay Williams, who was also my leader at the time. And since then, my life's looked a lot different. Meeting Christ doesn't just mean that you fix all the problems in your life or that everything becomes easier, but the nice thing is that, you know, Christ is always going to be there with you. It doesn't mean that sin goes away when you meet Christ, or that this temptation of all the stuff that I was doing before goes away when I met Christ, but that Christ was always going to be there to help guide me out of that and help fill me with purpose. And since then, what that's looked like is me going to River Ridge and learning more about what it means to have a relationship with God and how to pursue that better, and teaching others about my new true one passion, which is following Christ. And the way I've been able to do that is through Young Life. Just like JB and Jay invested in me because they cared about me and they cared about the Lord, I get to help invest in kids who were just like me in high school. So I really appreciate you guys listening to me, and I hope you guys have a good Sunday.